Hello and welcome to Scott Rock.
We're your hosts from Climb Scotland, Robert Mackenzie.
And me, Calum McBain, catch up with climbers every 2 weeks who have different epic tales to tell us.
We hope you enjoy the show.
And remember, when you're out climbing, be safe and do your buddy checks.
Alright guys, and welcome back to Scott Rock and the continuation of our Meet Your Hosts episodes. Last week you heard from yours truly. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, get in touch with us, leave us some comments. We are just going to jump straight into this one and let you learn a little bit more about your host, Calum McBain. Thanks, appreciate that.
Sorry, I just thought I'd put you off in the first little bit there.
Yeah, well, at least we get the one edit out the way. Cool, yeah, so I was thinking about what kind of introduction to give you, and it was hard. So you can tell me if you consider this representative of Calum McBain. Calum, you are a, let's say, young, climbing-obsessed, prolific rock fondler who looks like he's just stepped off a 3-week epic on a big wall somewhere.
Yeah, I reckon that's probably about right. I don't know if I can take, how long can you keep taking the young thing for? At what point am I not allowed to be young anymore?
Until you've got the same number of grey hairs that I have.
I might have adult children by that point.
Well, if it's taken you this long to even grow a beard, that seems pretty accurate.
Well, yeah, this is my half a millimetre of stubble is almost a year of growth.
What do you mean a year? That's been 28 years of growth. So yeah, I didn't know where to go with this interview. You know, I think you're in the same boat as me of interviewing someone who you know quite well. You don't quite know where to go because you know so much about them already. You know that there's quite a lot you could talk about. So thinking of questions for this was quite hard. Do I go down your entry into climbing, which is almost a modern day take on an old school classic, I suppose. Then you've got, the family man with the equally climbing obsessed family. You've got your RDO work. Then you've just got all your personal climbing. So yeah, I didn't quite know where to go. So I've written down a bunch of questions and we're just going to really see where this goes. How does that sound to you?
Oh, I'm pretty terrified by 28 questions.
Yeah, and a few of these are going to put you on the spot as well. I think this would be good.
So yeah, I'm worried. I feel like I'm quite opinionated and I'm worried I'm going to say something a bit too controversial for the PG-13 Scott Rock podcast.
Well, okay, if Calum does say something massively controversial, feel free to leave some comments on the website or on the Facebook. Let him know your thoughts. Direct all complaints to Calum McBain.
Oh no, what have I opened myself up to?
Yeah. So yeah, let's just jump off from. Let's talk about how you got into climbing, because like I said, it is a bit of a modern take, I suppose, on an old school classic. The uni mountaineering clubs is where a lot of the greatest mountaineers and climbers, not that I'm saying that you are one, but it's where the greatest mountaineers and climbers throughout history have started. A lot of them is through school clubs or mountaineering clubs or anything. Whereas the sort of more modern day entry into climbing is more sort of indoors, maybe with a touch of the competitive side, which you kind of skipped over. And the university clubs are still a huge part of our community now, and that's where you came in. So you are the modern day take on the old school classic. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your club and how you actually got started then.
Well, I guess I mainly started climbing in a uni club. I climbed a little bit before that. So I got into climbing when I was what age are you in primary 7? What is that 11 or 12 or something?
Yeah, 11, 12, something like that.
So I think the first time I went climbing was at GCC when I was in primary 7 for like a friend's birthday party. And I remember like going into the blue room and like instantly like falling in love with climbing. Like from that first time going to GCC, like I knew that was what I wanted to do. Like it was just like a total click, like instantly. Like everything else I found boring, but climbing, that's kind of what I wanted to keep on doing. And I remember being that like, I really, really vividly remember like, I think it was my friend Kerry who I went climbing with. And like he would like basically just pulled me up this 6A that was really overhanging. Like in the blue room in GCC, it's the one that's on like the doorway. And
That
I remember
one
like
overhanging panel.
yeah, like a slightly overhanging panel. And I remember him like basically like, 'cause he's a lot bigger than me, like hauling me up this 6A and me getting to the top and having no idea that like that's I suppose not really what you're meant to do when you're climbing. Like for my first time climbing, I was like, oh cool, you just get to the top, and like Kerry was just like absolutely like yarding me up this 6A, and I was basically like being flown up it, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then obviously you learn when you're a bit more experienced in climbing that ethic isn't really. That's not how I climb now. Luckily, when I try to do sport climbing or trad or whatever. But yeah, that was the first time I ever went climbing, and then I think my mum took me like a few times afterwards to GCC. I kind of went on and off a little bit, and then I just totally dropped out of climbing from the ages of like 14 to 19. And then when I was 19, I went back to I went to university in Dundee and joined the mountaineering club, and that's how I kind of got into climbing properly. Was started through hill walking, and then got into climbing a vertical world. And just basically got mad obsessed. I spent most of my time doing my degree, or most of my time not doing my degree and just going climbing instead, and using all my spare money from student loans to buy a rack, which has served me quite well, because I bought that 10 years ago, and it's like my current rack is still all from this like period of buying stuff in first year of uni. So like,
is that something you really want to admit on a podcast that's going out to the public?
Yeah. Well, some people are sensible and they save up their money and then get a mortgage or buy a car or something, but mine's turned out pretty well. Like, I still use all that climbing kit, so...
Well, yeah.
You've
You've
like
definitely got your money's worth out of it.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say it's not sensible.
Well, whether most smart climbers would continue to use some of that equipment is questionable, but yeah, each to their own.
Yeah, definitely a few people look at my rope a bit funny. I've probably had that a bit too many years.
Tell me, is that orange rope you've got?
Yeah, it's the one that, it used to be an 80-metre rope, and it's been used so much, it's now, I think it's less than 40. It's been chopped so many times, it's less than half the length.
It's also about as thick as my wrist.
Yeah. It's the no-fall rope. When you get in the project and you've got to do it, that's what you tie in with. Like
I said, old school.
Well, a mix of old school and new school.
So I didn't realise your first time climbing or being hauled up a wall was at GCC. And you went on to work at GCC. That's a weird little thing. It's like full circle.
I like trying to piece together, because obviously climbing is quite a small community, and I've enjoyed trying to piece together who took my climbing session when I was 12 years old. And I actually figured out that I think on the taster, I remember doing like the spire abseil. So in GCC you get to go up to like the church spire and like abseil down, like total staple of the GCC birthday party. But it was actually, I'm almost 100% sure it was Neil McGeechy that did my abseil for me when I was 12. And I really vividly remember it because I remember getting to the top of the abseil and asking Neil like, oh, if I like let go of like the abseil rope, like what's going to happen? And I think like Neil obviously was just like, oh, jokingly said, well, you're just going to fall to the ground, aren't you? And I kind of looked at him and was like, oh, that's really dangerous and unsafe. Like, no way. But being like a reasonably smart kid, I was like, right, I'm not going to let go at the top, because if I let go at the top, then I'll like die. So what I'll do is I'll wait till I'm like pretty close to the ground and then just let go and see if what he said was true. Now, I think what happened is Neil probably, obviously you have like a safety rope as well that like the instructor is controlling, but I've definitely done this being an instructor as well. The kid gets pretty close to the bottom and you just yard out loads and loads of slack and then get ready to get the next kids. So I think Neil did that just at the perfect time that I was thinking, oh, like I'm still a little bit high up, but I'll probably test it now. So I just like let go of the rope, and there's loads and loads of slack in the safety line. So I just like smash into the big cardboard thing in the bottom, and then I was like, he was actually telling the truth. Like, I did have the power. I was the one like lowering myself on this rope.
That's
And then just
amazing.
like dusting myself down and walking back in.
I really hope Geek listens to this. See, I remember being told the classic story of Neil McGeeky at GCC when a kid would ask, what happens if you fall out the window? And obviously the instructor, they've got their cow's tail on, they clip themselves to the anchor so they can't go anywhere. But there was one time a kid asked Geek, what happens if you fall out the window? And he'd go, oh, well, you just fall out like, and he jumps out the window and shock loads his cow's tail. Probably not to be recommended, but it made a very good visual for the kids.
Oh.
So you got into uni. Did you join the mountaineering club straight away, or was this like a second year? I need to actually get out of the pub and do something.
No, I think I was like a pretty terrible kid socially. Like, I was like properly like socially inept. Like, didn't know how to do anything, didn't know how to speak to people, like couldn't look people in the eye. And like, I think
still don't.
Yeah, probably still. I've not really got much better. But yeah, I remember, I think I tried out loads of different clubs when I went to uni. And I remember trying out like the hockey club and just being like laughably awful at it. Like, looking back, it's such a painful memory of like everyone lining up and taking shots of like shooting into the goal. And I was literally like swinging it like a golf club and like missing. And I think that was like so traumatic. I've actually semi-blocked out of my brain. Like, I can't fully remember what happened because if I did, I would be like a mess. But yeah, I tried like a few other clubs and just didn't really get on with them. And then I suppose I went to like the taster climbing sessions at AVW, which at Vertical World, which the Rucksack Club, which is the uni club at Dundee, which they ran. And it was kind of like, it was the same feeling of that moment when I was at a birthday party when I was 12. It was like, this is what I like. This is what I want to do. Like climbing. This is definitely it. And yes,
Think about it. You could have been the RDO for hockey right now.
Oh yeah. That's like the Calum alternative life.
Yeah, parallel universe. So yeah, join the club. What was your learning curve like with the club? Were you quite sensible in how steady you took it, or did you go classic university student? I've tried climbing once. Let's go do a winter solo somewhere.
I think.
Apologies to any students that are listening to this that are part of a mountaineering club.
You just insulted like every single university student.
The guys from Glasgow Uni are never going to look at me again.
I reckon I was pretty sensible. I think that was partly down to having pretty good mentors. Like, I think my mentors were like pretty safety conscious at the time. And then the other half, I think, is probably, this is a bit of a shout out to Mountaineering Scotland, or maybe more specifically a shout out to Heather Morning from Mountaineering Scotland. Because I remember going to all like the student safety weekends and like all the Mountaineering Scotland safety courses. So I had this like nice blended approach of learning from mentors, but then also getting like really cheap, like formal tuition in climbing, which I think was like a really good basis for learning all the skills. And I was like, I think back then I was just like a total sponge for climbing information. Like, I just wanted to know everything. Like, I would sit and watch like YouTube instructional videos like every night on how to rig an abseil or like how to build a belay, like, and just sit and like absorb everything.
You know that if there's any kids listening to this, they're not going to believe you're young enough that you were watching YouTube back then.
Yeah, I don't know. What would we watch for YouTube? I don't know.
VHS videos.
Yeah. Well, what is it, like the Alpine Essentials DVD or something? That.
Nice. So, what was like a couple of your craziest trips with the uni club? Like, what did you guys actually get up to in the Rucksack Club?
The Rucksack Club, I think, was pretty tame as a uni club. Like, I don't think it had like a massive climbing pedigree. I think a lot of the trips more stemmed from like a Vertical World. Like, a lot of the climbing around that time was more focused around sort of people I'd met at the wall.
Right.
I'm trying to think of like uni club trips we went on. There's a really good like May bank holiday weekends where we managed to fit in like every sort of climbing in the space of a weekend. And it tied in with like this is like my highlight of the Mountain Union Club was I organised the mystery trip to Mull. So every year there'd be one weekend trip where only the meat sec knew about it. And that year I went out the boat. I totally went for it. Went for like remote island and organised this trip to Mull. But before the Friday we managed to go because the ice was really really good. It was that winter. It was really really low pressure, high pressure. Well, I can't remember. What's the good weather one? High pressure.
High.
I should know that being a mountain leader. I feel like that's a bit of a... I obviously missed my weather class. It was like really good high pressure. And like the winter conditions were amazing. So all these low level ice falls were in condition. So on the way to Mull or to Oban, we got did Izani, which is near Ben Lay. It's like low level waterfall. I remember like doing that in t-shirts, like ice climbing in t-shirts. And then going to Ered on Mull, which is like the little island that's not really attached. Like at low tide, it's not attached, and at high tide, like it's connected via a little sand strip thing.
Pretty sure you got that the wrong way round.
Oh no, yeah, sorry. Low tide, it's connected to the like mainland Mull, and at high tide, it like gets chopped off from the
When the water rises, a magical bridge appears.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. But it's got these amazing like micro granite roots. So they're like all like 10 to 11 meters long and like perfect granite cracks. Like they're just
lovely.
That awkward length where if they're a bit shorter there'd be boulder problems, but they're kind of like mini trad roots.
Yeah.
And it was like
sounds
really
like most of the crags in the south of Scotland.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I had an excellent day there, like climbing, and then I think we did Ben More. So we ticked like the hill walking box on Sunday. And then, what did we do Monday? I think we went skiing at like Nevis Range. Trying to complete like every activity in a long weekend. That was really one of the more fun rucksack club things we did.
That sounds pretty epic actually.
There wasn't too many like climbing trips in rucksack. I think a lot of the climbing trips I went on tended to be more organised out with rucksack club.
Yeah. So what happened after you left uni then? Like, what did your climbing look like? Were you still sort of climbing with the same folk you were at with uni, or did you go out with a lot of the guys from AVW and go on some crazy trips?
Well, I think so. I had like a bit of a rocky, like my last year in university was like really, really bad. Like I had like a really, really bad breakup and like I basically didn't have anywhere to live. So I was kind of like couch surfing for like a few months. Which seems kind of fine at the time, but it's a bit horrible not having like a place that's like your own little home.
Yeah.
And basically I ended up like failing my last year of uni. Well, I failed at my dissertation, so I'd done everything else, but like I couldn't hand in my dissertation just because like I was kind of everywhere. But it turned out quite nicely because I resat it the next year, but I basically had an entire almost year and a half to like hand in this dissertation, and I hadn't quite finished it, but I was almost there, so it was already like 2/3 done. So I had this like year and a half of being basically I had funding from SAS still for another year. And like very little work to do. So it was basically just like a year and a half of like climbing almost non-stop. And at the time I think I was single and didn't really have anything to do. So it was just like basically 100% like the climbing lifestyle. Yeah. And I think like that period is probably where like I climbed the most and like did the most trad and like pushed myself in the most. And met loads of really, really cool people as well. Like I became one of these like UKC obsessives. Like I would just sit on UKC looking for climbing partners because like I had so much free time. Like people, like my mates at uni, like Tim Gummersall is a really good friend and we climbed a lot. He was like busy doing his like medicine degree. So I was like, oh shit, I need other people to climb with as well. So I just like find people online and then hook up with them and go climbing. But yeah, that was like brilliant, like year and a half.
Nice. So like in that, you know, part of your time at uni, obviously, and part of that year and thereafter, you are a bit of a mega all-rounder. I'm going to put you on the spot. So, mega all-rounder, you've done some pretty cool stuff on trad. You go sport climbing a lot. You live right next to Dunkeld, lots of Spanish holidays, Boulder, loads of winter back in your younger days, we'll say. But I'm going to put you on the spot. Rank them.
As in, what's my favourite?
What's your favourite, what's your least favourite? And I want you to justify your answers as well.
Oh, that's tough. Because it's probably changed a little bit.
Yeah.
I think, like, even though I don't do it too much now, I reckon winter is still, like, my number one favourite thing to do. And, like, most of, like, like, your big, like, pipe dreams that you have in your head that, like, you wonder if you'll ever do them. I think, like, the most, like, alluring ones I have are still to do with either, like, winter routes or alpine routes. Like the north face of the Eiger is, like, if I did the Eiger North Face, I think I could, like, die happy. Like, that would mean more to me than, like, any trad, sport, or boulder route. And I can't imagine, even though I don't do that much winter or alpine stuff now, I think it's just, like, winter is, like, especially winter routes in Scotland, it's just this, like, amazing journey in the space of a day. Like, you start at sea level, you do this big walk-in, and you climb this, like, big route, and you go back down to sea level all in a day. And it's just... yeah, it's, like, brilliant. I think with winter...
adventure.
Yeah, like, winter stuff as well, I think I've always been more drawn to, like, ice routes rather than mixed.
Yeah.
I think, strangely, I find mixed routes a lot easier to climb because I think being a relatively good rock climber, like, it's more transferable. But, like, winter, I just find the appeal of routes that are only passable because there's some ice there, like, really, really appealing. They're almost, like, ephemeral. Like, if that ice disappears, there's no way you could get up that face anymore. It's impossible. But, like, ice makes it possible to climb at, like, an amenable grade. And, like, I really like that idea of, like, something that's that kind of... what's the right word? Ephemeral is, like, the best word to describe it, I think. And you only really get that with winter routes, I think. Although there's really good sport route in Angus called Ossian, in a cave in Arbroath. And, like, I remember having this mad obsession of wanting to do it, because a few people had done it one year. It's always wet, like, almost 100% of the time. It's so wet, it's unclimbable. And I think I really wanted to do that route when it was dry for the same reason, because it's almost this, like, ephemeral, like, this route that is normally, like, so wet you can't climb it is suddenly dry. And, like, I find myself really drawn to, like, experiences and routes like that. So, winter number one.
Okay.
I'm going to go trad number 2 as well. I think trad's, like, proper type 1 fun. Like, I don't really ever have much type 2 fun in trad. Like, I think, like, all the time I'm trad climbing, I'm usually, like, pretty enjoying it. Like, winter climbing, you have to go through a bit of, like... you have to go through a bit of suffering. Like, that's kind of part of it. And that's what makes it really good, is, like, suffering and then kind of coming out at the end and feeling like you're kind of, like a super person because you went out and handled this situation. And that's actually a good point. Like, I think, like, going winter climbing really equipped me, like, with loads of life skills at the time, because you'd go out and do this, like, gnarly winter route in totally gnarly weather, and you come back to normality and, like, everything seems really trivial. Like, all the problems in your day-to-day life are just, like, well, like, I can survive in, like, a storm in the Cairngorms, like, climbing a grade 5 or a grade 6. Like, I'm pretty sure anything that comes at me in, like, normal life is probably going to be alright if I can, like, thrive in that situation.
So
that's
like,
another...
missing your bus or your phone running out of charge doesn't quite compare.
Yeah. Which is lucky, because I'm so disorganised, and... probably shouldn't say that on, like, a work podcast. Like, I'm so disorganised in normal life that, like, every day is, like,
I 100% second that.
every day is, like, trying to, like, battle through. Yeah, so that's another winter one, sorry. Trad climbing next, I think. Usually type 1 fun, pretty good. Nothing better than, like, big multi-pitch, sunny weather, really good. And then I think sport and bouldering afterwards. I think they're almost tied.
Ooh.
I don't know why. It's funny because bouldering has become a lot more important to me now, having, like, young kids, because I think it's a lot easier to go bouldering.
Yeah.
And I appreciate
it's kind of out of necessity.
Yeah, it's like a way of staying fit, but I've always seen bouldering and sport climbing more as, like, a form of athleticism rather than for their, like, a sense of adventure.
Yeah.
And I think there is a sense of adventure in both of those. Like, there's people that go like finding new boulders and stuff like that. I really liked someone from Three Wise Monkeys wrote a really good blog about finding like treasure outside in the form of boulders. Like, you're always like hoping that around the next corner you'll find like the Malxeret that no one's ever climbed.
Yeah.
And that idea is super cool. So you do definitely get adventure in bouldering, but I think for me, I've always seen it more as like the pure strength and athleticism kind of thing, rather than for the adventure of it. And sport climbing is kind of the same. It's about like pushing your body as hard as it will go and seeing what your physical limit is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I'd flip winter and trad for me personally. Admittedly, I'm just not a fan of being cold. I don't like being cold. Everything else about winter climbing I absolutely love, but I just don't like being cold. I'm a bit soft like that. Okay, so follow-up question to all that. Given what you've just, what order you've just put things in, top 3 routes in Scotland. They could be winter, trad, sport. We'll ignore bouldering because you put that in the bottom 2.
What? Top 3. Wait, is it on each category or just overall?
Let's go for each category. Go on.
Or I'll do overall just so it doesn't take so much time. But it gives me.
Okay.
I'll try to pick a couple from each. Best ever winter route. I'm trying to think. I think I have a best ever winter day, but it involved multiple routes.
Ooh.
I think the best ever winter day I had was with Anna Wells. And I think this was during this like year and a half period I talked about a bit before. And I think Anna was in medical school at the time, working in like Nine Wells. And I was working at the Wall. And basically we thought that the forecast for the next day was meant to be amazing. Like bluebird day, like high pressure again, like absolutely awesome. And the conditions in the Ben were really, really good. Like all the ice was good. But I was working until like 12 at night in the Wall, and I think Anna was working like a half night shift at the hospital as well, and she finished like 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning or something. But basically we were like so psyched that it was like, we've got to go out and make the most of this. So we just thought, we'll just do like an all-nighter. We'll drive at 2 in the morning, go straight to the Ben, like just do the walk-in, smash out some routes, like walk back to the car and drive back, and just like do it all in a day. Which always seems like a really good idea, and then you actually do it and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty grim. Like I remember, Anna won't like me for saying this, but I'm sure like we were walking in through like the forest at the start of the Ben track, and she was like properly like chundering everywhere, like all I think just from like being awake for so long and not having had any sleep, like throwing up in the path in. I think she felt like properly grim.
That is spectacular. I can't wait for her to listen to this.
Oh, I know. But to be fair, she still like walked in and like totally trooped on. And I remember
she's hardcore.
I know, definitely. We walked in and did Smith's route. No, we did Tower. What's it called? Is it Tower Scoop? I think we did Tower Scoop and then did Smith's route above it. And Smith's route is like amazing. It was like one of those dream routes for me. Like I remember watching. Have you seen the Hot Aches film called The Pinnacle?
Yeah.
With it's got Dave McLeod and Andy Turner in it, and basically they do all the Smith and Marshall routes from the 60s, which is like Smith's routes and a few other ones. And like after watching that video, like I just had an obsession with wanting to do Smith's route. I remember getting there, and I think I got to lead like the Crux pitch as well, so it was really, really steep icefall, and it was like absolutely amazing. Like perfect ice, like blue skies. The only thing that detracted from it is I think we were both so tired in the belays. Like, you're kind of like belaying like every once in a while. You know when your head kind of falls to one side and you wake up really suddenly?
Yeah.
Like, I think both of us, that definitely happened to us. Or like the rope moving through the belay device would kind of like startle you and wake you up again. This is probably not very good like safety advice, but yeah, we did Smith's route and then came down and I think did... Was it like Indicator Wall or something afterwards? Which was like gripping. Like a Smith's route was totally perfect. Like I remember doing Indicator Wall and doing like the main pitch, which was on this like horrible cruddy ice, which just like fell apart and there was no gear, and climbing for like 40 meters for an ice screw. But you it's funny, I could see like up ahead there was like a belay, and you just kind of like, you just tell yourself like, just keep on, one more step, keep going, one more step, one step closer, and you're just going to keep repeating that to yourself, and eventually you're at the belay, and it's like, oh, thank God, I'm all right. But you do, there's points where you just feel like you want to be like absorbed by the ice, so you feel safe again, rather than just like sketching about on this horrible, cruddy ice.
Yeah, and that's the thing with winter climbing. It's really hard to climb down. Like, it's almost way more dangerous to climb down than anything you're actually on. I had that conversation with Mike Pescod. It's just like you get yourself into situations, you're like, right, I actually really don't want to be here, but going down is now not an option.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it equips you really well. Like, you just have a good sense. You need to have a really good sense of composure winter climbing to stay alive. Because it's difficult to climb down, isn't it?
Yeah. So trad routes then.
Trad routes. I think probably doing 2 routes right beside each other. I reckon. So there is the needle and the steeple. I think are 2 of my favourite trad routes.
Oh. Still have not made it to go and climb on Shelterstone yet.
It's tremendous.
I had like 3 trips fall apart on me last year. It's got to get done, man.
Well, you've not had much luck this year either with coronavirus.
No.
It's one of those amazing crags. Like, there's certain things in your life, like images you have that will never like leave you. You'll always remember. And like one of mine is always like starting up the initial slabs. If I think either the needle or the steeple, and like looking up, and the crag's like it's like El Cap, I guess. It's like a big dome shape. Like, it starts off slabby and then gets more vertical and more vertical as you look up. Yeah. So when you're starting in the bottom slab and you look up, it's almost like this big bastion above you is looming over you. And like, it's amazing. Like, it's such a cool like sense of scale.
It's such a cool looking wall. I've stood underneath it a bunch of times, but I've never managed to climb on it. It just looks incredible. And like, I get what you mean when you say it looks like El Cap. It does. It's got that same like similar kind of shape. It's just, well, a lot smaller, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 really good climbing partners, I think, in those 2 trips as well. Like, I think that's always a bit of a key part for me, is like, I don't remember just nice routes. Like, I tend to remember if like there was something funny that happened to my climbing partner, like the banter in the day, like the stuff with Anna and the winter day always sticks in my mind. I think I climbed the needle with Tim Gummersall, I mentioned before, and we climbed together loads at uni. He was like a really good climbing partner. I think complemented each other quite well. I think he was always like, he's a really, really good climber, like really good runner as well. And I think he always was able to climb like a little bit harder than me, but at that perfect level where he wasn't that much better, so we could compete. We had like little internal competitions all the time, trying to beat each other. And we each had our own little strengths and weaknesses. Like, I tended to be a bit better like bold pitches, but he would be better at like tough, like physical climbing. So we worked really well as a climbing partnership. Yeah,
it's always good when you get that like the little friendly competitiveness between you and your partner.
Yeah,
I mean that's, you know, I attribute a lot to where I got because of the climbing partners I had back then. You know, Mike Lee, Nick DeBoost. Plus I had my little brother nipping at my heels the whole time, and I was determined not to let him beat me.
Yeah. That's funny. It needs to be the right level though, because if someone's too much better than you, you almost don't bother trying to beat them.
Yeah. It takes a special level of motivation to try and beat someone who's way above you. But yeah.
Although
so on that note,
what? On you.
No, you carry on.
I was thinking about that. There's another interesting thing I think is a lot of the multi-pitch climbing I did. Like, I think when you go with people less experienced than you, it like brings on your experience level so much. Because I remember like taking unifolk climbing a lot when I'd sort of been at it for a few years, and like, there's so much more responsibility when you're the more experienced one. Like suddenly, like if there's anything happens at all, like you're the one that's got to get out of it. And when you come up against like a scary looking pitch, you can't just like pass it over to like your mate who's a bit better than you. It's like, right, I've got to like climb this pitch and I've got to get up this. Like,
Yeah.
So sometimes climbing with someone who's like not quite at the same level as you can really, I don't know, I found like brought on my kind of competence in the mountains like quite a lot, and just like my general confidence in climbing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like when you're explaining stuff as well, you're thinking a lot harder about the wording you use and making sure you really understand what you're talking about before you say it to anybody. And anytime you do something, you're thinking about like they might be learning off what I do here, so what I do needs to be picture perfect.
Yeah.
I've definitely noticed that if you climb with someone who's off a lower level, you're definitely a bit more on it with things. So I'm going to appeal to your philosophical nature, because that's what you did at uni, isn't it? Philosophy. You were a philosophite.
Yeah. Not the most useful degree, but.
So yeah, I'm going to appeal to your philosophical nature. I've got a couple of questions. One of them's kind of in reference to what you just said, but I've got a good one here. Something that non-climbers, I don't think, they just don't understand this fully. But I think every single climber that has ever done climbing gets it. The climbing is not just a sport or a hobby, it's a lifestyle. Can you explain that concept with your philosophy head on?
That's a good question. I think like climbing in particular like tends to attract certain personalities a lot more so than other sports. I think in climbing just tends to attract people that have very obsessive personalities.
Yeah.
There's just something about it being like a bit niche and like this combination of like maybe ticking routes or something, or like bagging Monroes would be like the hill walkers version, that in a lot of other sports you just don't really get that. There's not like a way to channel that obsession. Like if you play five-a-side football with your mates, like I don't think it lends itself to being obsessed. And I think when anyone that has that level of obsession over a certain like sport like climbing, like it just tends to like totally dominate your life. Like everything you do revolves around that sport. I think climbing just tends to attract a lot of obsessive people, so what you end up with is a lot of people that climb, and like climbing is totally their lifestyle as well.
Yeah. So what is it then that appeals to you the most?
About climbing, or?
Yeah.
Good question. It probably comes down to people. Like I think, like always being quite like a socially anxious kid and probably teenager as well. Like I found it quite difficult to relate to people.
Yeah.
And I think like climbing is almost like a kind of get out of jail free card for relating to people, because if you climb, you can then relate to anyone else in like your tribe of climbers. I think everyone's been in that situation where you're like a hardcore climber, and you're at like a party or something where no one else climbs, and you're like, oh no, I'm like, I've got nothing to talk about anymore. What even is this? But it's weird. It's like a total juxtaposition, because like I don't think I actually talk about climbing with climbers very much because I find it a bit boring. But I definitely find it easier to relate to other people that call themselves climbers.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a sort of mirroring in personalities, and that I think that obsessive nature as well. But I totally, I 100% agree. The amount of times that I've been at a party or a gathering of some sort and nobody else is a climber, I'm just like, art's good, right? Yeah, football. That guy kicked the ball, good. You kind of definitely run out of stuff to talk about when you can't brag about your latest climbing exploits.
Yeah. But then at the same time, no one wants to just talk about climbing when you're in like a room filled with climbers.
Yeah, like when you can't talk about climbing with people who don't climb, you also don't talk about climbing that much with people that do. It's like that thing of being told you can't have something and it's all you want then.
Yeah. Never happy.
No. So on that, so we do a talk every now and again, and as part of the talk, we mentioned that we both feel that climbing is more about the people than the climbing. Like you just said, and I 100% agree with it. But what do you mean by that?
Climbing is more about the people.
Yeah.
I suppose... I'm trying to think of a good answer to this.
He's deep in thought.
Contemplating.
You can literally hear the cogs turning over the podcast.
I suppose to sum up, you never really... It come back to what I said before. Like, you never really remember, like... Or at least for me, like, I don't particularly remember, like... routes and names of routes and, like, grades and stuff like that. Like, the things that stick out in my head tend to be more about the people that were involved in doing that route or going climbing.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I think of more memorable climbing experiences, it's always... The more important thing is the person I was with, rather than what we climbed. Like, I remember moves, and, like, I think certain routes are cool and stuff like that for sure, but I tend to have more permanence when it comes to remembering people and days out than I do about remembering, like, certain moves or, like, grades of routes or names of routes or anything.
Yeah, yeah. Like, you can go and climb something that you consider absolutely disgusting, like horrible rock, not that nice climb, maybe the weather's absolutely rubbish, but if you've got good banter with the person you're with, you're going to consider that a really good day.
Yeah, sure.
Like, the person that you're with absolutely makes that day. And what I'm kind of moving into is you have, through the people off climbing, gained quite a huge amount from it. You now have your girlfriend and 2 awesome kids.
Yes, I suppose... Does that put me in, like, a rate... Is there many other people that have... Presumably loads of people have met their partners through climbing, but... I don't know, I guess me and Becca are maybe quite rare, because we're both probably equally obsessive climbers.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have Lucy, who's my older daughter, who's like 2.5, and then Innes, who's my younger daughter. He's like just about to turn 6 months now. So like that was definitely like, I met Becca through climbing. Like I think we originally, I'm trying to think when we first met. I think we went to Skye together, and kind of climbed a bit when my thumb was broken, and that's kind of how we first met, and then things kind of went on from there.
Nice. Yeah, and like, it's awesome that the whole family, like, I consider it really cool that the whole family is kind of climbing based. Obviously, you met Becca through climbing, but, you know, you go and hang out at Crags. Lucy loves hanging out at the Crags. And please don't take this the wrong way. Please don't take this the wrong way.
What's he going to
say? But, you know, the climbing, like you said, you've got an equally climbing-obsessed family. Becca is a better climber than you.
True.
Lucy loves being at the crag, but she also, what was it she did the other day? Volunteered to do your work for you so you and Mummy could go climbing.
Oh, yeah.
That was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. And I know that, you know, like you said, there's probably a few people that have met their partners through climbing and everything, but there's so many climbers out there whose partners don't climb, don't have any interest in climbing. And I think a lot of people would consider what you've got to be absolutely hitting the jackpot. What's that like from your eyes?
So hitting the jackpot in terms of having like a climbing partner, and yeah. I don't know. I suppose I don't know if my kids are into climbing yet, but maybe one day. I think there's always good points and bad points to things. Like I think for me the good point is like our family activity is like climbing. So like we get to go to the crag as a family and like go bouldering or go sport climbing, and everyone comes and like everyone's having like quite a good time. Like there's a bit of a sacrifice made in terms of like maybe we're not pushing it as much as we would if we went by ourselves. So if I went to the crag by myself, just a friend, I'd probably get more climbing done. But that's kind of a sacrifice I think we're kind of willing to make to... I think it's rare that two people enjoy the same thing enough that they can both go and have a good time. Like if your partner was into running, like you'd always have this feeling that when you go climbing that your partner just wishes they were away running. Or like if you went running, that your partner just wishes that they're away climbing. Like, so you always kind of wish you were doing your sport. So it's nice that both of our sports meet up and that we can both go climbing and have a really good time. But at the same time, it makes it kind of difficult because, like, to take your family to the crag, like, you do have to sacrifice a little bit in terms of your own climbing. Like, you don't get to push it as much as you normally would, and it stops becoming your own personal time. Like, sometimes it's nice to have a bit of time to go away and climb, and that's just like your thing that you do. So we don't get that as much. But I suppose a compromise is me and Becca still, like, we have it at the moment, so one day a week I get to go away and have a climbing day, like, do whatever I want. And then the next week Becca has the same, and then we swap over. So it just kind of alternates. And then most of the other time, like, we'll go to the crag as like a family, or go bouldering, or like go out for a walk, or go running. And yes,
has there been a kind of change in the priority of climbing to push your own ability to just climbing for the enjoyment of it?
I think I've always kind of climbed for the enjoyment of it. Like I like pushing myself as part of that. But like, I think like no matter what kind of climbing I'm doing, I always enjoy it.
So, you know, your personal life, your family life, your work life, all climbing orientated. That is as much immersion therapy as I could possibly imagine. So do you still feel the same now for it that you did on that first day climbing, or when you joined the uni club?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I couldn't imagine ever not having that feeling towards climbing. And I've climbed for like if you count, so when I first went to uni, like, I've maybe climbed for almost a decade pretty consistently. Like, and in those 10 years, I probably crammed in like quite a lot of climbing. And I'm still not sick of it. And I think the way I always know is, like, if I'm doing certain things, like, I'll always be dreaming about going climbing. I'll always be thinking of like going to the crag and like doing a route, or going bouldering or something like that. That's like what I sit and daydream about now when I'm doing other things. Which for me is a sign that, like, that's still what I absolutely love. That's
still true obsession.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. When you wake up in the morning, you've had a really good climbing dream. It's like, oh god, I need to get a life, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, one thing we haven't spoken about is that work life. I suppose it's probably good that we touch upon it, seeing as that is where this podcast has come from. So yeah, you, like me, are one of the Climb Scotland RDOs. You covered the East Coast. I'm going to say, you know, second best RDO. So, right, in your words, what is the role? What is the RDO role? I hate this question, by the way.
Whoa. That's like a very, like, worky question.
Yeah.
What does it mean to me personally, or?
Yeah, actually, let's go for what does the role mean to you personally?
So I think it's just, like, I'm sure from the last, like, 50 minutes or whatever, like, climbing in quite a short space of time has given me quite a lot. Like, in terms of personal fulfillment, like, resilience, and, like, having a family and having kids, and having, like, generally, like, quite a nice life. Like, I kind of see the role of, like, RDO as, like, an opportunity to, like, maybe see if younger kids will want to go through that same journey, like, and show them how much there is to take out of climbing, and, like, the variety of stuff that's on offer for them. Because, like, having worked with kids for a really long time, especially in climbing, like, not every kid is going to become, like, an obsessive climber. Like, for loads of them, it's just, like, that kind of social thing they do, and that's totally fine. But, every once in a while, like, you bump into a kid, and, like, you can just tell they have, like, the fire in their eyes. Like, I just know in 10 years' time, I'm going to bump into them again, and they're going to be at a crag. And, like, I'll know they'll went through, like, a similar chain of events like I did.
Yeah.
And, like, that gets
it's cool
me...
when you think back and you can name a fair few names of people that you know you're going to bump into at the crag in 10 years.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see in another 10 years, because I suppose there's a few kids I can think of now who I'm like, yeah, they're mad psyched for climbing. Like, they're still going to be there in 5 years. And even so I've done like the RDO role for 4 years, and there's people I met at the start who are still like super psyched climbers and like really getting out there. So it's like
Yeah.
nice to see them as well.
Yeah. So what's been your favourite part of the job then? Like, what is your favourite part? Or could you give me a favourite day? Oh god, favourite day would be hard.
Favorite day? It's hard. I think probably all the outdoor stuff we've done has all been really, really good.
Yeah.
Like I love indoor climbing. Like it's really good. But it's that same thing as like for me it falls into like the bouldering and sport climbing kind of category where I see it more for the athleticism than I do for the adventure.
Yeah.
So like I find myself a bit more drawn to taking kids outside and showing them like what's on offer in Scotland and having these big adventurous days. Like going bouldering in Torridon with kids, I think is definitely up there as one of like the best days because we've always had
Oh.
really good weather and just I think I can't remember the kid's name, but is it Brody?
Brody.
It like blew my mind that he came to like a Torridon session we run and he'd never climbed anywhere before. Like his
That's-
first experience of climbing in Scotland was climbing at the Celtic Jumble, and like just seeing how much of a blast he was having, like
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like that's the kind of thing. Like I'm sure that memory will stay with him forever of like getting to mess around in all these big boulders and having like a total time of his life in Torridon.
Yeah. I mean, getting to go to one of the world's like no argument. Don't even try and argue with this. Like Torridon, the Celtic Jumble, is one of the best boulder spots in the world. So getting to go to there, that must have ruined any other type of climbing for him.
Yeah, he's lucky. He's lucky he doesn't live in the Central Belt. 'Cause then he would have had to go to like Rosyth or I don't know Neilston for his next ever trad day.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that I've got anything against those venues, but when you've been to Torridon, your benchmark is
The
pretty
bar
high.
set so high, so high. Yeah. So what? So in your job, then, you know, you've said what it means to you, kind of personally, and what your favorite part of it is. But what would be your main goal from this job? If there's one thing that you absolutely wanted to achieve,
I
while
think
you've got this job.
just being able to. So when we are like ancient and in our 70s or whatever, to be able to look back and see like loads of kids that are really inspired by what we were doing.
Yeah.
Like for me, like if I got to the end of like the 4 years of doing this job and only one kid had been absolutely like inspired by climbing as a result of something we did in our jobs, like I would take that as a win. So in a way, like I think we've inspired loads of kids, like hopefully more than one. So like even
Yeah, fingers crossed, more than one.
yeah, so like I think we're winning already in terms of like yeah, or I feel personally like I've done quite a good thing already just by hopefully putting kids in a position where they can take a lot out of climbing and it can add a lot of value to their life.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I think for both of us, I think we've definitely inspired a fair few people, you know, and I can think of loads of kids that I am pretty confident we're both going to run into at the Crag in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
Who have all been part of the work we've done. And whether, you know, they even remember our names in 10 years' time or remember what we do, I don't care. The fact that they're still climbing is a win for me. So, right, I've got one more question for you then. This is your opportunity now to convince every single non-climber that's listening to this to try climbing.
Oh,
Go.
That's optimistic that you think there's many non-climbers that listen to this podcast.
Look, I'm an optimistic person, all right?
What would I say to non-climbers to try get them into climbing? I suppose it's not like cheesy to say that climbing can genuinely completely change your life, and like in a very short space of time. Like I think loads of climbers will talk about climbing in a way that where like a switch flicked and it was like almost an instant change of perspective. So like no matter who you are, like that same flick of a switch could go off in you with climbing. So you may as well give it a shot, and if it happens, and you might have found something you love. And if it doesn't, then well, go try golf or something. See if the switch flicks there.
Yeah. Nice. I think that's a good little advert. We'll make a video about that. We'll put that out. Cool. Right, well, I'm going to say that is us done an hour of chatting absolute nonsense. So, thank you very much for having a chat with me, answering some questions honestly, giving us a good little insight into the dark, dingy, scary world of Calum McBain.
How many questions did you get through all 28 of your questions?
I did. I skipped a couple. I did skip a couple. They weren't really relevant.
I'm surprised you missed the broken thumb saga.
See, I did. You touched on it, and I did consider it. It's alright. We can post the link to the video in the comments for this.
Yeah, the Daily Mail article.
Yeah. Brilliant. Right. Well, thank you very much, buddy.
No problem.
Awesome. Nice one, Calum. Thank you very much for sitting down with me over a long, extremely long Zoom call, recording all that. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned a little bit more about myself and Calum. You will be hearing from us for the foreseeable future, we hope. So yeah, as always, leave us some comments, send us an email, get in touch. If you want to be on the show, or if you know of anyone who wants to be on the show, give us a shout. Take care, guys, and as always, when you get out there, do your buddy checks.